Hi guys, this is Zach from Watches on You, and today I'm taking a look at the Tudor Black Bay 41 with the newer blue dial. So this watch has been around for a while in the black dial configuration, but Tudor fairly recently released a blue dial model. So this watch, overall, it's kind of supposed to be the entry-level version of the Rolex Explorer. They kind of have that same style to them and the same simpleness where they are no date, 3-hand timepieces, and they're made to be just tool watches first and foremost, but yet a little bit more versatile than maybe the regular Black Bay, or if you're talking on the Rolex side, then the Explorer is going to be a bit more versatile than the Submariner, and the fact that it doesn't have the diving bezel and is just a little bit more subdued to maybe look a little nicer with a suit or in a little bit more dressy environments. So now let's do a overview of the case. So the case is the 41, and that's why it's called the Black Bay 41. It has polish. It's polished on both sides of the case. The finishing is quite nice. Tudor does a great job finishing. It's really close to Rolex finishing. Rolex just has a tad better in certain areas, but really no complaints whatsoever overall. The bracelet, as you can see, is stainless steel as well. It would have been nice to see a taper in the bracelet. These haven't really had they haven't tapered the bracelet that much. You can see there's a slight taper, but it's not quite. I think it's a little bit thicker than what I would like to see in the end, but still looks great and feels great on the wrist. The clasp, you can see, is solid bar clasp, very high quality. It's reminiscent of the Rolex clasp, where you have just push it down and then flip the safety over. So now let's go on to the dial and the movement. So as you can see, this has a matte blue dial, and it's really refreshing to see a matte blue dial. Typically when watchmakers or watch brands will make a blue dial timepiece, they'll usually stick to sunray, but personally I prefer a matte blue dial to a sunray blue dial. So I really like this dial. I really like that Tudor chose to do this beautiful matte blue dial instead of a sunray. It glistens in the light. It looks absolutely fantastic. I love it. I think the shade that they picked is absolutely perfect. Not quite too dark, not quite too light. I think they just did a really good job with picking this blue dial, and it just adds a bit more pop of color than the traditional black dial. So one thing though I would like to mention that I did notice this on this timepiece is, so Tudor has these crown tubes, these colored crown tubes. You can see in between the crown where you actually the crown that you actually screw out, and then the case, there's a little colored crown tube, and they'll usually match that to the dial color. However, on this blue model, they just have a standard black tube in there instead of a blue tube. That's just something I noticed. Not really going to affect you at all, but I just thought it was interesting because I believe on all the dive watches, they do color coordinate them with the dial color. So that's just one, or the bezel color if you're talking about the red bezeled Black Bay diver. So now let's do a wrist shot. So on the wrist, this watch is quite large for a no date, no bezel watch. I think I would have liked to see a 38. They do a 32, a 36, and a 41. This 41, I think it's a bit large for my liking. I think many people though would like that. If you like a larger watch, I think that this would be quite nice on your wrist. I think maybe they didn't go with the 38 just because the Explorer is a 39 and they didn't want to, compete that directly with the Explorer, being that Tudor and Rolex are both part of the same company. So that maybe is why they chose to do that. I just think the 41 for a non-dive watch, just a bezel-less, no-date timepiece, is a bit big because I think it just makes the dial overall a bit too large. But that's my personal opinion. Many people like watches that are nice and large like this, so I don't think there'll be a huge problem. And 41 isn't overly large by all means. It'll be just fine. But that's just my little take on this. One other thing though I would like to mention is the movement in this timepiece. The movement is an ETA 2824 movement. It's got a 38-hour power reserve. Would have loved to see that power reserve just go a bit up, but it is just a generic ETA 2824 movement. It's not the in-house movement, and I'm not really sure why that Tudor decided not to do an in-house movement when they released this blue dial model. because this watch comes in at $3,000 new, and then I believe the diver, which has the in-house movement, comes in about $3,700. So I think it still would have, they still probably could have put an in-house movement in here just because the price difference isn't necessarily that great. So it would have been nice to see that. I suspect they might do that sometime in the future, and I hope they do, but this does still just have the ETA movement in it. So overall, this watch that I actually have here is a pre-owned timepiece. It's available at JB Hudson Jewelers. They lent us this watch for the purposes of this review. I'll be leaving a link in the description to their website if you're interested in this timepiece. You can contact them and find more about how to purchase this. Thank you guys for watching this video. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. Thanks.